Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast for Australia brought to you by Nutrient Ag Solutions. So I'm going to be honest with you, I think that the performance of this drought monitor product that you have is pretty good. I've been paying attention to it for the last several weeks, and overall I feel like it's doing a very good job of representing where we've had both surpluses and deficits of moisture. And I'm thinking a lot about what we've watched, of course, across Western Australia. We've talked a lot about this. We saw the bushfires that we had last month, and that's been discussed and I think understood quite well. But I want to just take note of what's going on in South Australia as of late. We've continued to see our drought monitor showing the degradation of moisture in that area. And in fact, if I take you from the 1 month map, which is one we're looking at, back to 3 months, it really begins to stand out in that area. And a few of you have emailed me to talk about some of the concerns you have in this area. And I'm just trying to show you that it is showing up very well in the data, which is something we're going to continue to monitor over the next months, several months. Bad news is the upcoming pattern does not bring moisture to this area, not significant moisture into these areas that have been quite dry. We're going to have to take a look at what's key about that pattern and what's changing, and also have a bigger discussion about La Nina, its evolution, and what the long-range models are saying. So I've got a lot ahead of you here, including four different long-range forecasts, which we're going to analyze. In fact, I think I actually have 5. If you include BOM, I've got 5 in there. So real quick before we leave this page, let's stretch this out to 6 months just to kind of get an idea about how recent that drought has come on. Now, I say recent, but it's a 3 to 4 month process by which we've seen the really dry conditions move into South Australia, while Western Australia has been dealing with this for quite some time. Now, lately, just looking at the month-to-date precipitation compared to average, so these are anomalies, I feel as though the models did a very good job at predicting this last time we talked. Remember, we were looking at the building of higher pressure here, the flow coming out of the east, and it was kind of running in at times almost out of the north, pushing up against higher elevation, producing this precipitation. But that particular configuration leaves part of South Australia. It leaves a lot of Victoria out. We were a bit drier the farther north you go up into parts of Queensland, along this section here, like coastal New South Wales, right in through here, where we were wetter farther to the south. And the precipitation pattern as of late was largely driven by that high pressure cell and its movement. Now, to show you what I'm talking about, again, it's this. Last month, this high pressure cell that you see right here, okay, it was over there. We watched it move. That was the forecast, to see it move, and it was going to start to increase our easterly flow that then eventually curled around into much of eastern Australia. I'm bringing this back up again because the upcoming forecast is going to hinge on the pressure pattern to our south, more so than the MJO. In fact, we're not even going to talk about the MJO because of where I currently think it's stuck and not affecting things. And certainly in the near term, this is the more dominant factor than even what's going on with the transition toward La Nina. So please understand that these winds curling around these high pressure cells are what's critical. So since the beginning of this month, there it is. See the circulation? This is looking at the composite wind. So we're just seeing here this flow coming around. And one of the reasons why we've been so dry, if you're not in that region that I highlighted, is you've got this wind that's been relatively strong out of the east. It's been very strong to the north, in the northern part of Australia, out of the east as well. And I think it's going to be the evolution of the trough ridge pattern to our south, which dictates where we're going in the next couple of weeks. So let's get in and see this, okay? And then we'll get to that longer range. I'm going to give you this big view. I'm doing this because I like to be able to see the entirety of what's going on across our southern oceans here. And this is right now. So what we're going to watch here as we play through the day on Thursday is there's a trough. See this trough coming in right here? It's going to sneak up along the east coast, but its position is what's key to where the moisture is going to go. Because what this is going to do is this is going to send more moisture from the south to the north rather than from the east to the west into Australia. And you're going to see what that does to the precipitation in just a few moments. But then following it is another ridge of high pressure. But just take note of where this goes by Sunday into Monday and Tuesday of next week. The previous time this happened, that high slid farther along our southern shores. This time it's dipped farther south of us. And the most important thing about that is where the circulation can drive the moisture across Australia. It's also going to be very influential in your temperature pattern I'm about to show you as well. So this is Tuesday into Wednesday of next week and playing forward. We continue to see troughs trying to come in here, where for the previous month we had high pressure. That's now shifted into this area, but we are not seeing the right setup to deliver the flow, again, to come around in this direction and come into Australia out of the east. It's a much different look than what we just saw. So if that takes us out all the way till next Friday, all right, we got a good long, 8-10 day view of this. Let's get in and actually see what the model's up to. So this is the 12Z European run. Its first data point here is at 9:30 a.m. on Thursday. Now you're going to see the effect of that trough. It's right there. See it? And as it sneaks toward, Tasmania, Victoria, and right along the coast, we can already see where its moisture is going, right? It's sneaking up in this direction. It's not the same kind of flow we saw. So it's too far offshore to deliver much more than some coastal showers. And you see where the high pressure is building in behind this? So this high pressure cell is, in this vicinity. And as a result of just thinking about the high pressure that's in there, in fact, I should be drawing my lines the other way. What we've got out ahead of it is this. So flow is running north-south here, moisture staying offshore. This is not the same setup as we had before where this high-pressure cell came in and flipped that flow out of the east. So by Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, see where the moisture is sneaking? Right along the coast, not getting into, very much onshore at all. I mean, I can just keep playing this out. And at the very end of it, next Friday, Saturday, sure, there's a trough that could swipe a front through this part of Western Australia. But other than that, we're not looking at much. Can I show you this all faster? I sometimes find it easy just to play it quickly. Here it is again. You're going to watch a couple of things. Trough sneaks in through here. Ridge builds across the south, but it's limiting the moisture transport. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, now getting into Thursday and Friday. And we can look at that relatively quickly because when you add it all up, this is what we're looking at in terms of total accumulated precipitation. I'll go ahead and take this out 10 days just to show you the model run. That means most of Australia, save right along the coast, is relatively dry and possibly right here on the border between Queensland and New South Wales. Some interior showers are possible. Now, as we're moving through autumn here, please understand that these models aren't going to capture everything. We're using them to understand the overall pattern. But I can add to this some other ways of analyzing it. For example, we could look at that same model run and just try to assess over the next 10 days, where does the precipitation stand compared to average? And you can see that most of Australia is looking at a 5 to maybe up to a 20 millimeter deficit compared to what we normally get over the next 10 days. We can also use the new artificial intelligence forecast model. I'm still working on a lot of great things for this for you that can show you precipitation anomalies over the same time period. It's the next 10 days, so it's through May 25th. And overall, this next 10-day stretch is relatively dry. So you see, this is what my complaints were about the transition toward La Nina. We saw every model wanting to call for wet, 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 didn't they? And we said, we've got to watch some other factors while we're in this transition mode. And it's making me call into question some of the validity of the longer range forecast we're about to discuss. Now, from this 10-day forecast, can I just show you over the next 10 days, what's the probability here of staying dry? That's the way we can really think about this. So these are the chances at staying under 1/10 of an inch of total accumulated precipitation. Sorry, I switched back to imperial units on you, but that's what I've got here. And you notice that its probabilities are very high except here and right along the coast and there. Outside of that, we're looking overall, almost no precipitation. What about as we play forward out there fully into week 2? Overall, the 7-day anomaly, now back in millimeters, out there for week 2, just continues to show drier in South Australia, drier in Victoria, drier into the interior of New South Wales, and also into parts of Tasmania. But this whole drier signal in this region is largely because of the movement of the high pressure. It's no longer curling around delivering moisture. It's a bit farther to the south. There is the possibility, once we get out there past the next 7 days, that a trough of low pressure tries to drop a front into Western Australia, but I'm not seeing it too much. I mean, it's not showing up as being anomalously wet as we look out there all the way to the 29th of May. Okay, when we look at the temperature pattern, our next 5 days are shown here. We're much cooler in this entire region, warmer in parts of Western Australia and to the north. This is compared to average. But as I stretch this out, take a look. This is now moving out there. We'll go ahead and pause this day 5 through 10, which gets us again out to the 25th. And during that stretch, you saw a lot of cooler air throughout much of Australia. Models want to flip this back over once we get out there, day 10 through 15, which gets us all the way to the 29th and 30th, with delivering some warmer conditions back in again. So we're on a bit of a ride here with temperatures. Cool now, except for parts of Western Australia. It really gets cool kind of day 3 through day 11, and then we start to see some warming up happening at the end of that time period. Okay, that's your near term. What I really like to focus on, as you all know, is that longer range. And this is what's showing up quite interesting. Do you remember last week we talked about or 2 weeks ago, we just talked about the presence of that high pressure cell sitting here? Well, over the month of June, we're now starting to see this trough ridge pattern change with deeper areas of low pressure here and our high pressure cell sitting farther off the coast. And if that's the case, if this is how things are going to shape up in terms of our pressure patterns, and again, I'm making the statement that most of our, the biggest driver of our precipitation, I guess is a way to say it, is coming from the pressure pattern across the south, then it would make sense that given what I just explained, that the precipitation anomalies over the next 30 days look something like this. Why could we be a bit wetter here? Largely because of the trough of low pressure that's to the south, sweeping a front through. Outside of that, we don't have reason to make a call for really wet conditions into June. Now, what's really compelling about that forecast, which I based entirely off of the pressure pattern, is that it does not agree with what BOM is saying. This is BOM's forecast, and their forecast looking at the chance of exceeding average rainfall. Well, it's above average when you get into a large section here of Western Australia into South Australia, and it's even near average the farther east you go. And what I was suggesting is that we may be more on the drier side of this than the wetter. Now, of course, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get timely moisture. That's good, but I need you to see the contrast in these models. So after discussing the pressure pattern, which is ultimately going to be the driver, that's what I think you're going to have to watch most carefully. I do want to add to this some other information. Because not only do we get a 1-month forecast from what's called the European Extended or the European Weeklies, their long-range model, their seasonal model, does a month-long projection as well. And overall, it's not showing strong anomalies one way or the other, but it is suggesting that we stay near normal to slightly wetter than normal all along the East Coast. But the concern I have is how much of this dryness continues in this area in here as well, where we know based off of the current drought monitor status, what we're looking at here is already being quite dry. These areas have me very concerned at this point. Beyond that, we can add one more model into the mix. And I apologize, it's an international view here, but this is what the month of June is looking like right now from the National Multi-Model Ensemble. And overall, while it doesn't show much contrast across Australia, can you see the drier conditions it has kind of in this corridor and over toward New Zealand? I continue to see that being a consequence of having high pressure kind of living in this area and what that could potentially do. That seems to be the case of it as we go forward. Now, setting that aside for just a second, just knowing that there is uncertainty, I really think a lot of uncertainty to start June. We feel pretty confident about the rest of May being dry. But getting into June, I want to show you a couple of other things to think about here. Remember this map from a moment ago where we assessed this high pressure cell? Take a look at this. This is the resurgence of trade winds. That is the beginning of La Nina. And our ocean temperatures are responding. So we're already beginning to see some cooler water show up in this area. Now, before I leave this, though, take a look at the Indian Ocean. On the large, the whole thing is warm. We've seen some cooling in this area, which suggests we could start to see a shift in the Indian Ocean dipole. But in the near term, I'm not going to use it as a strong kind of climate driver for us. It's not going to be a dominant variable by which I'm going to use as a predictor going forward in the near-term future. I think La Nina is going to be key. To show you what's going on with these ocean temperatures, though, one of my favorite sites, I've shown it to you hundreds of times, Tropical Tidbits. Go to tropicaltidbits.com. When you go there, the website looks something like this. I click on Analysis Tools, and I go right over to Ocean Analysis here. Now, a couple of things to take note of. Take a look at what's gone on in the Central Pacific, the Niña region 3.4. We are right now almost sitting at 0, meaning that ocean temperatures have returned toward historical averages. What's interesting about that is if you kind of look at the sea surface temperatures, you look at where they've changed. See the La Nina emerging here, but you look at it compared to the global average. I really like this graphic. Take note of the cooler water showing up here, suggesting some shifting around of our Indian Ocean dipole. Now, again, what this map is it takes the average global ocean temperature today, a snapshot today, and then compares to that global average the individual regions. Now we can really see the upwelling that's going on here that's driving this La Nina that's coming in. There are still big questions that remain on the strength of this La Nina, but we're going to keep an eye on it because it will be critical for our upcoming forecast. I mean, it's going to be huge for winter. So here we go. Let's take a look at it. BOM has been an outlier. In their recent update, they did shift back a little cooler. But in their previous update, I'm not sure if you all saw this, but they were calling for smack dab INSO-neutral conditions to last all the way to October. So through winter, even towards spring, no La Nina in the works. Now, why that's important to us is because I love this page, by the way. This is one of my favorite pages they create, is they compare their forecast to the Canadians, the Europeans, the Japanese, the French, the United States, and the British. And in a few moments, I'm going to show you the forecasts from BOM, European model, and the Japanese, plus NOAA. We're going to look at all of them. So take note, right now in June, they were still calling for warm ocean temperatures in Nino 3.4. And I just showed you they already hit 0. So we have to call into question Meteo France and BOM to the fact that they're still on the warmer side of this. In July, BOM is still warmer, while nearly every other model except for Meteo France has gone cooler. What about August? That's when they come down and hit average. At that point, the Canadians, the US, and the British have already dipped this into very weak La Nina. Going toward September, they maintain that. The European model starts to join in by October. And now again, we see that BOM and Meteo France are the outliers. Now, this is important. This is not to say one is right and the other is wrong, but I'm looking here at the comparison, trying to see what this all means. So maybe what we do is we need to just keep the narrative going and take a look at what's trended in the models. So this is looking at that Nino region 3.4, and you know that I like the European model. I like it because it statistically is our best performing model, so I tend to give it more weight. What you're seeing here on the left is their old forecast, the one that was issued in April, where it was calling for slightly cooler than average conditions in the INSO region, getting out there to August, September, October. Their new forecast has dipped it a bit farther, touching the weak La Nina category. So this is just an important trend we have to be watching. What that has done for Australia is this. What we're going to watch here is the precipitation anomaly forecast, 3-month sliding window beginning with June, July, and August. As we step forward into July, August, September, watch what happens after this. The model gets wet August, September, October, wetter September, October, November, and actually continues on with a very wet look, suggesting full La Nina type precipitation as we head toward next spring, which will be wetter. And I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, all right, I need this to be proven to me, because I need to really see that the MJO cooperates, the pressure patterns that are part of the Southern Annular Mode cooperate. And just to know the fact that even though some of our near-term models have been doing okay, this kind of longer-term outlook month by month has been missing the mark. So what I need to do next is look for some consistency in this. So can we just come back to the June, July, August look? What I want to do is, again, we're wetter east, drier west, and drier along the south. Areas I'm very concerned about, looking persistent in the forecast June, July, August from what we've just had. How about looking now at the National Multi-Model Ensemble? Now we can do this a couple of ways. I just want to show you what you're looking at though. There are 8 models, they're all listed right here, that go into making this map, which is a June, July, August precipitation anomaly forecast. And take note, the current forecast is not looking aggressively wetter or drier for Australia, June, July, August. If you had to ask where the model's at least considering the better probability of being wetter, it's here. New South Wales, Queensland, maybe parts of Western Australia, but down toward Perth, near Adelaide, they've got drier conditions. Tasmania, similar. Take a look at where it's wet and where it's dry. And also thinking about New Zealand being, well, on the more risky, drier side of things. Before I go away from this, I also want you to see how dry things are expected to get down here in southern Brazil, where it's currently flooding going out there to June, July, August. That's an important transition there as well. I mentioned we're going to look at 5 different options here. We've already done 2. Let's now go look at the Japanese. This is their forecast, again, for June through August. And I know you're going, what am I looking at? Well, I'll help you figure this out. This is the graphic I want you to see. This is their newest forecast. And if you look at the shading here, we're looking at wetter than average and drier than average. Now take note of how wet they're expecting the Indian Ocean to be here, getting into Southeast Asia, getting into the Indian monsoon season. Look at what we've got for Australia, though. They've got a larger area right in here. It's just the faint color here, but they're showing an increased rainfall rate right in that corridor. They're suggesting the MJO likes to live way over here in phase 1. A lot of suppression in the in the Pacific Ocean. And if you notice, we come over to this side over here, they're suggesting that the pressure pattern that's right here where we have high pressure now is beginning to break down. And the breakdown on that pressure pattern is leading toward a weaker circulation to the south than we've been seeing. See that? So this would be on the weaker side of the wind field, turning up that high pressure that's just to our south. You see, this is why I'm telling you we got to watch the pressure pattern to our south more than anything else, I think, in the near term. That may be the more dominant signal than the shift around in the trade winds, which is characteristic of the change over to La Nina. That's Model 3. Let's go on to Model number 4. This was just released today, so I'm looking at it. I looked at it an hour before I decided to present it to you. This is the June, July, August precipitation probability forecast from the IRI multi-model probability forecast system. It's a blend of models that they've run a statistical algorithm over to minimize error. And what you notice is where they're expecting it to be quite wet, where there's currently wet conditions. Flooding around the Yangtze may continue. Early onset of the Indian monsoon. Could we be drier, continually drier in the Russian wheat belt? Possibly. What about the finished to safrina crop or the winter wheat that gets planted in Argentina? Could be drier there as well. From June, July, August, let's just keep going. July, August, September. You're going to notice that these models just keep getting wetter and wetter as we work into next spring for Australia. But they're just behaving according to the strength of the La Nina event they're trying to brew. And so we got to watch this carefully. One more model, and that of course will be BOM. This is their June to August forecast, looking at the chance of exceeding median rainfall. And I want you just to weigh this against what you just saw. So that's it. That's your 5 model rundown, and I am calling into major question whether or not this La Nina gives us the early impacts or the late. I think that if we have impacts from La Nina, it's coming much later, not toward June, July, August. I actually think we have drier risks June, July, August than I do think we have wetter based on what I know today, and that's entirely based off the pressure patterns to your south. All right? Given all of that, I kind of walked you through what other things were happening worldwide. Can I go back to the northern hemisphere summer? You see, if we continue to see dry conditions here in the Russian wheat belt, we've already been dry lately. This could be problematic. Storms and their forecasts for the Midwest have changed over wetter. This is our primary corn and soybean belt. We've been so wet, though, throughout our cotton belt as of late. In fact, let me go show you that. Throughout our cotton belt as of late, that we've had some major troubles getting a crop even established. And there's even been some shifting away from certain crops like cotton over toward peanuts, corn, and soybeans across our southeast. The map I'm drawing over here, or looking at here, is the last 30 days as a percent of normal. And if you're curious, this part of Texas, now we grow most of our cotton over here, but this part of Texas, some places here have had 10 times their normal rainfall in the last 30 days compared to average. Our entire corn belt is extremely wet. We are way behind average on our planting in the 2 biggest states, Iowa and Illinois, for corn and soybeans, but that's not to ignore other large areas. And even though some rain has come into our winter wheat belt right in through this area, there is still a large hole of very productive ground that did not get enough moisture to undo some of the major drought stresses where we grow winter wheat. Next, we have had a tremendous amount of severe weather. I talked to you a bit about it last time, but just to show you something, we've already had nearly 800 reports of tornadoes, 3,700 reports of severe wind damage, and over 2,260 reports of large hail. Maybe some of our severe weather's made it into your news. It has been ridiculous in terms of severe weather across the United States. From there, I do want to show you South America. Over the last 30 days, using satellites to estimate rainfall coming out of Paraguay into southern Brazil, this is the state of Rio Grande do Sul, we have some places in here that have picked up between 600 and 800 millimeters of rainfall in a 30-day stretch, causing massive flooding. Now, they only grow full season crops down in Rio Grande do Sul. It's north of here where they grow a safrina, or second crop, which is mostly corn and some cotton. A lot of the cotton's in Bahia right here and also over in Mato Grosso. But the Brazilian monsoon shut down about 2.5-3 weeks early, while the extremely wet conditions have stayed to the south. And it's still like that. If I play this out over the next 10 days, look where the rain is. It's way down here, looking at another 100 to maybe 200 millimeters of rainfall locally out of this next system, just absolutely hammering the same areas with heavy rainfall while we've got drier conditions north. Argentina, you've seen some colder air that snuck through. We had a frost event that hit Buenos Aires and Cordoba, which are these two states, or provinces, and farther to the south. And that's going to continue to be top of mind as we go forward. And one last thing to catch you up on internationally, I want to give you this map. It's the last 30 days precipitation anomalies. I want to show you how wet it's been south of the Yangtze. Look at this. We have some places down here that are in excess of 250 millimeters of rainfall just in the last 30 days. You heard earlier in this 30-day time period about the flooding that was near Dubai. That's showing up here. There's the dryness in the southern Russian wheat belt. We are going to continue to monitor. It's also been very cold here as of late. And just a couple of other places to look at, like the Manchurian and North China Plain, as well as what's been quite dry in parts of Southeast Asia and the Philippines. Some of this is changing over, but they remains, these big ovals are where I remain or continue to see some of the stresses. All right, so we've got all the new model updates in. We've taken a look at the dry forecast we have for the next 10 to 15 days. And you know what I'm watching. It's that pressure pattern to the south. You've seen some of the international weather issues that we're talking about. And I hope that's just brought you up to speed on some of the things that are top of mind for me. So I will keep watching. And we'll report back here in a couple of weeks, continue to do this analysis. And hopefully we'll have some news for you that is actionable. So I appreciate your attention, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.